On continue maintenant avec un 5e intervenant, notamment Mme Sylvia Olgemark de la coalition Verte, qui veut s'adresser au maire relativement à la politique des milieux naturels. Une habituée de nos conseils d'agglomération. Bienvenue, Mme Olgemark.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Oui, ma question, c'est pour Monsieur le maire Tremblay. Mayor, it's a pleasure for me to congratulate you again on your election and also to all councillors here today. I also thank you, Mayor, for meeting with us at the height of your election campaign to discuss Green Coalition's concerns for our city's natural environment. And when we met you in your office, you assured us that $36 million would be available in new money for the Natural Spaces Program, politic, and that was to be over a 3-year period for the new triennial. This new money will make it possible for successful conservation to continue across the island. Like we've just seen a new nature park at Cheval Blanc and enlargement of 3 other nature parks from east to west. Mayor Tremblay, will you please reaffirm today that the $36 million over the next 3 years will be provided in the new budget for the Natural Spaces Program? And finally, may we please call you to set up that meeting you promised to us for the Green Belt for Montreal and southwestern Quebec, the Parc écologique de l'Archipel de Montréal. That's it.
Merci, Mme Olgemark. Thank you. Monsieur le maire.
Yes, good evening, Sylvia.
Good evening.
I recall very well our meeting in my office prior to the electoral campaign. I mentioned very clearly that we would take a commitment to continue to invest in green space, but we had to take into consideration investments in parks of the city of Montreal that were neglected for a long period of time. That's the reason why we committed during the electoral campaign to invest $41 million. That includes parks, but could include also green space. It's definitely not $36 million over a 3-year period like we had previously, but in the $41 million, yes, there are funds available for acquisition of green space. And I also committed to take into consideration your suggestions, and as a result of that, I'm having our internal administration team evaluate how we can answer needs of the Green Coalition, because we strongly believe that the representations that you make on a regular basis with all your colleagues that are present here today are important for us, not only to meet the objective of 6%, but also to find ways to protect as many green spaces as possible. But there's a major challenge that we have in the short term. We have to take into consideration our parks that have been neglected for decades. So in the last mandate, we invested $36 million. There's still money that is available, but definitely not the same amount, $36 million over the next 3 years. But we can evaluate that as we go along. But the important decision we took is that to continue to support the efforts of the Green Coalition and also the objectives that were put forward by the Quebec government.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Olgemark.
Yes, I have a little follow-up commentary and question here. I do hope that you will consider that being a little bit indefinite as to how the protection of this new, in this new way for the politique de mise en valeur des milieux naturels can continue. And I'd like to remind you that well, when we had a setback with the moratorium in 1992, that lasted for 10 years. So to shy away from this program at this time would be a disaster for our city. And I'd like to remind you that according to the bilan in the spring, the actual new conservation measures undertaken in the eco-territories amounts to, at the time in the spring, less than 1% of our territory. That is less than 500 hectares. I'd also like to point out that we see a momentum growing with the program, and we ask you, please don't quit now. It's time to move forward in this vein. And finally, we applaud your work on the world stage, and with the International Year of Biodiversity, the spotlight will be on Montreal. Please don't kill off the conservation initiative here at home that validates your fine work on the international scene. Your credibility is at stake. Will you please consider carefully?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, the reason we accelerated the investments in green spaces with the collaboration of the reconstituted city is because we were conscious that there was a moratorium of 10 years.
Yep.
And as a result of that, a lot of green spaces was sold or built upon. So I think we were fortunate to accelerate those investments. Yes, we have a momentum, and the person that's responsible for that momentum is Alan de Sousa, so he will tell you exactly what he intends to do. But as far as our credibility at the international scene, definitely, and that's why we'll be with the World Forum for Climate Change, and we added biological diversity. So we'll be in Nagoya to continue to represent the interests of the City of Montreal, which corresponds very clearly to your interests. And the reason why we have credibility at the international meet is because we have people like yourself in the Green Coalition that have become very good, conscious of what we have to do together. So I'll ask Alan de Sousa to tell you exactly what his recommendations will be eventually to the Executive Committee and also to the reconstituted cities.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. de Sousa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very quickly, I don't think anyone's putting into question our commitment here at this council to green space protection. I think we've had good collaboration with all of the partners here to make sure we advance. The policy has to be relooked at to see is it still valid in the current context. We have a very tough budget coming up ahead. I won't hide that from you. From what I've seen so far, it's definitely tough. The recession is hitting us hard. So how do we manage to balance out our commitment to green space, commitment to biodiversity, but also managing it in our budget? We have begun finding other ways. For example, finding other partners. Some of the decisions taken by this council in September were submitted to the CMM as part of their plan, and under that plan, the Executive Committee of the CMM, and I'm hopeful the Council of the CMM next week, will accept to fund a portion of that. So by doing so, it allows us to maximize some of the investment that we've done, but with contributions coming from other levels. We will need help, and I encourage you to do everything you can to broaden your appeal to Quebec. To this date, I have not seen one red cent coming in from Quebec, either in terms of money or in terms of land. No. And I think it's incumbent on us all to make sure that, including yourselves, to make those representations to Quebec so that at least we're not the only ones carrying what is a very heavy load. Clearly, the island of Montreal must be considered and should be considered, because when they create provincial parks elsewhere, I think it's also reasonable to consider that in urban areas that can happen. And lastly, just to give you a bit of hope, one of the issues was with regard to the Bois de Saraguay, and this week the Executive Committee is recommending, and it'll come to Council the middle of the month of December, there was, as you remember, at 9150 Gouin, there was a lot that was there. Well, there's a recommendation that's going forward that'll come to Montreal Council and to the Agglomeration Council.
Did you know the house had been burnt?
I beg your pardon?
That house in Bois de Saraguay that dispute was about has just last week, I believe, been burned.
Well, I'm not aware if the house was burnt or not, but the question was being able to say, can this last piece of land, which is needed to complete the protection of the Saraguay forest, can that be acquired? And so that's the question that we hope to secure the support of council. So that's one small step, but it's an important step, and you who've been at the charge of Sarugay, protection of Sarugay for years upon years, can probably appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Souza,
you.
and thank you, Mrs. Oljamark.
Thanks.